What's going on? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to talk about the recent matchup both on Instagram of Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria, saying a fight between them two is signed. Ilia Topuria said that the UFC made Max Holloway sign the contract, and Max Holloway posted it on Instagram that the Blessed Express is back. If you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing is the best way to support the channel, and we're on to the road to 1,000 subscribers, so please go down there and hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications as you're down there, because it is the best way to keep in touch with all my UFC content that comes out daily. Let's jump right into the video of Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway finally being signed. Okay, so on Instagram recently, Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway have both announced that they have a fight scheduled, and the only logical thing that I can take from this is that they're going to go and fight one another. Ilia Topuria, we know, is the current champion at 14-0, I believe, and Max Holloway just came off an absolute incredible win at UFC 300 against Justin Gaethje. But how does this fight end up playing out, and where do I think this fight ends up happening? And I think first off, I want to start on what this fight ends up happening, and I think that is going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah. I think the UFC is heading back to Utah for UFC 307 on October 5th. There's already Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evloev on that card, which is an amazing fight. I could get into that fight a little bit more if you guys wanted to, but that's an absolute amazing fight with some beef behind it. But I think the main event for that card is going to be Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria, and that is an absolute banger of a fight to be the main event of that card. Now, the other place I could see this happening is UFC 308, but I think that card is going to be headlined by Islam Makhachev for the UFC lightweight title. But between Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway has a true chance of beating Ilia Topuria. He is so good on the feet, and every single thing that he throws is going to be able to really impact Ilia Topuria. And we all know that Max has that snowball effect to where in the first round he's kind of going lighter, and then as the round pick up to where the third and fourth round are usually his strongest rounds of the UFC fight. That fight against Justin Gaethje was a perfect explanation of that. The only round that Max Holloway lost was that fourth round, but in the fifth round he knocked him out, and in the third round he had an absolute masterclass. And the only reason he lost that fourth round was because he got knocked down by Justin Gaethje. But Ilia Topuria, we all know, is one of the best pocket boxers in the UFC, and I believe he's one of the most underrated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling artists in the UFC currently, and I think that would give Max Holloway a really hard time. We look at Ilia Topuria's frame, and his frame is a lot like Alexander Volkanovski, although I do think he's a little bit leaner. I think he's a little bit more fit, and I don't know, I think he's a little bit of a better boxer than Volkanovski is, where Volkanovski has the edge in the wrestling department. I just look at a fight between these two absolute monsters inside the UFC, and there's no way that this cannot be a banger. I could 100% see Max Holloway getting knocked out in this fight. Considering that he has never been knocked out before is a crazy statement to say, but Ilia Topuria's power that he possesses in his hands is absolutely immense, and truly it is something to be had, and it is truly special. The way he knocked out Alexander Volkanovski with one punch was absolutely crazy. He slept in him. I'm not saying that he absolutely does that to Max Holloway, because Max Holloway's chin is different, but he can absolutely beat up Ilia Topuria, or beat up Max Holloway pretty easily if he lands up one, punches and rocks him pretty dang easily. But look at Max Holloway. Like I said, that snowballing effect is going to be really a massive thing for Max Holloway to be able to rely on, considering that he's going to need to take advantage of Ilia Topuria in these later rounds in order to win this fight, because if he is going to be able to win the first round, but Ilia Topuria is a guy who lands power over volume, and that is something that is really the difference in this fight. We have two really well-rounded fighters, but it's the battle between volume and the battle between quality. And not saying that Max Holloway shots aren't quality, but he tends to put up a lot more strikes than someone like an Ilia Topuria or most fighters inside the UFC. He has the most significant strikes in the UFC currently by a significant margin, by a couple thousand, which is absolutely insane. But how do I see this fight going off? A very earlier prediction. I see Ilia Topuria getting the job done, and I think that that's going to be because Ilia Topuria has more ways to win this fight than Max Holloway. And I'm not saying Max Holloway cannot grapple, but Ilia Topuria is genuinely an absolute gem on the ground. He has such good jiu-jitsu. You look at the Bryce Mitchell fight where he absolutely ragdolled Bryce Mitchell everywhere around inside the octagon. I think if he wants to, he can really drag Max Holloway around this octagon. But Max Holloway could 100% win this fight. Max Holloway cannot be overlooked because he is one of the greatest UFC featherweights of all time, but this is a true challenge for Ilia Topuria. Easily the hardest fight in the UFC featherweight division for Ilia Topuria, just off a stylistic matchup of how good Max Holloway's chin is, of how good his striking is, of how good his distance management is. But if we see the Max Holloway that came out from UFC 300, I don't know how Ilia beats that. But ultimately, I think Ilia wins this fight if Max Holloway has a little bit of a lacks performance, but Max Holloway 100% has a chance to win this fight against Ilia Topuria. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Fights is MMA, and please know that this fight has not been announced yet, and this is just a speculation on Instagram, considering that both fighters have said that they are going to be fighting very soon, and I know that Ilia Topuria only wants to fight Max Holloway at this point. Even he doesn't want to fight Alexander Volkanovski. Anyone else in the UFC featherweight division he does not want to fight, and the only person he will is Max Holloway, and considering that Max Holloway came off that impressive performance at UFC 300, I cannot suspect that he's fighting anyone else other than Ilia Topuria, unless if it is Islam Makhachev, but I think that is highly unlikely. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights in MMA, and please let me know what you think about this possible fight announcement coming out very, very soon for UFC 307, in my opinion. Could also be UFC 308, but I do think that the headliner for UFC 307 in Salt Lake City, Utah, is going to be Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway for the UFC Featherweight Championship. If you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing is the best way to show support to the channel, and 98% of my viewers are not subscribed, so please go down there and hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights is MMA, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.